Well, thank you everybody for hopping on. Super excited about this. I think it'll be really fun. I hope everybody has a good time and learn some stuff. So this is going to be a Q&A with some folks that have hiked the whole section of the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania. And by doing so, they actually applied to receive Keystone Trails Association's Appalachian Trail Award. I'm really sorry, my cat just walked in the kitchen. I apologize about that. Um, and so these people are super awesome, and they have really great information and stories that they can share. I do have a prepared list of questions that we're going to start out with, but if you have specific questions that you'd like to submit, as they come in or towards the end, we can certainly ask them questions just live off the cuff. Um, Definitely want to be mindful of everybody's time, so we are scheduled to sign off by 7, just to give them a break from talking, but also just be mindful of everybody's evening. Before we get into that, my name is Holly and I'm with Keystone Trails Association. So again, thank you for being here. If you're unfamiliar with the organization, we're a statewide nonprofit that takes care of a lot of trails in Pennsylvania. So there's a lot of trail maintenance, and KTA also hosts events for people to be able to go out and hike safely in groups and learn about the trails and just learn from one another about hiking and how to hike mindfully and respectfully among others and throughout nature. We have some other events coming up that if you are super jazzed about these online webinars, there are a couple more coming up in March. And then we have some in-person events coming up as well, like our spring hiking weekend. It's in Stroudsburg, so there's a ton of hikes that you can choose from. And then there's some guest speakers that'll be there in the evening. And they're pretty chill, like laid back experiences, but you can make it as challenging as you want, depending on which hikes you choose for your weekend. We also have our 100-mile challenge that you can sign up to do at any point in time. It's a fundraiser. You can hike 100 miles over the course of a year and you get a sponsorship from your friends or family. It's just a cool way to tell other people about the work that KTA does, and it gives you a nice incentive to go out and go hiking. So I mentioned this Appalachian Trail Award. So, and I think I explained this earlier, but to receive the Appalachian Trail Award from Keystone Trails Association, the applicant must have hiked the entire Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania. So these 5 folks that are here with us tonight, they did that, which is super cool. We're going to learn more about that. So this just gives you a little idea, if you're unfamiliar, where the AT runs through PA. KTA actually produces an Appalachian Trail guide for the PA section, and we've been doing that since the 1950s. So this one here is the 13th edition. It just was released at the tail end of last year, so it's the most up-to-date information, and it's available for purchase on KTA's store online. So that's super cool and super helpful. So with that being said, Pennsylvania it's just a very interesting state for the AT. It's a mixed bag of what you're going to experience when you hike through it. So this was just a quote from one of the blog articles that I was reading, and it just kind of struck me funny of like how mixed of an experience that you can have as you're hiking through the valley, and then you get up into some of the like really rocky areas. And so it's very interesting. It's a very interesting place to hike and all be on the same trail. So we have some super cool people with us. I hope this information is correct. This was pulled from their applications for their awards, but this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of where these people are from. And they're all like such varied people and their experiences and how they approach hiking and their backstories and everything. So I think this will be a super fun conversation. Before we hop into that, just like housekeeping, if you're not on the panel, if you could please keep your mic muted. And again, if you have questions that you'd like to add, just throw them in the chat and I'll do my darndest to ask them, or we can just run through the questions that we had already prepared. And yeah, just thanks for being super cool and for being here. Um, I'm going to stop my share so we can have the video available. And to get started, I just wanted to invite the people on the panel just to say hello, like, hi, my name is blah, blah. And then just to introduce super, super quickly, if you could share your name and what your approach was for the hike for the ATs. So did you do it in one shot? Did you do it through, or did you do weekends? Did you do day hikes? So your name, what your approach was, and then how long it took you to do that. So Cole, do you want to start that off for us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So my name's Cole Amsden. I'm from Hermansdale. My approach was I did a bunch of sections, weekends together, and they varied from 3 days to 5 to 6 days, and I completed it over the course of 2023 last year.
Awesome. Brant, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. So yes, my name is Brant. I'm super casual hiker on the Appalachian Trail. I was a section hiker, did it on weekends as well, like Cole. Except the difference for me was I did it over years actually, which really picked up during the pandemic, like I think it did for a lot of people. But I have a tendency to carry a lot of extra gear because I will hike in and I like to camp and be relaxed and comfortable. So it was usually maybe the longest weekend was 27 miles, but just doing that over time was a good weekend out.
Very cool. Rob, do you want to go? Rob and family?
Yeah. Yeah. So my name's Rob. We actually did it from, I believe it was the 16th of May. We did it straight through and we finished on the 9th of June. So what's that, like 19 days, I think, 21 days, something like that.
That's awesome. Who do we have next? George?
Sure. George here from New Hampshire. So my approach to hiking was kind of as varied as the PA itself, right? So initially it was 15 miler, 55 mile weekends where I would just have a decent sized pack to still be able to camp, but camp minimalist in a minimalist style, and do 25 miles one day and maybe 20, 25 next day. The last section I did last, let's say maybe 80, 90 miles was as a more relaxed backpack, just to actually enjoy it, since the miles were a little easier, and it was just a good way of kind of enjoying that experience.
Very cool. And Cyril, my friend?
Hi, yeah, Cyril from Center Valley. Also, my trail name is 4 Feet because I'm crippled and hike with forearm canes. I started the Appalachian Trail very early in my when I became reawoken to hiking, and I knew very little, so I knew nothing about shuttles. So the vast majority of it was out and back hikes. So I would say probably about 80% of the trail in Pennsylvania I've done at least twice. Then I did do one or two. I did I think two overnights or one 2 night, 1 2 day, 1 3 day overnight, also in southern PA. And it took me about a year or so to get the Pennsylvania portion done.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here and for being willing to share your tips and wisdom with everybody. The first couple of questions that I have are kind of blocked off with like logistics. So, the first question is, what resources did you use to plan your hikes? Does anybody have any tips and tricks and thoughts on that? That was helpful.
Definitely map, the map set you were showing earlier. That was what I used extensively.
Oh, awesome.
I used Far Out, which is formerly called Gut Hook Guides. I love maps and I can port over maps all the time. During Michaud and some other sections, I had my Purple Lizard maps with me because those were always enjoyable. But Far Out was awesome because that's an app. I would download everything ahead of time, and that was probably the most important for like water sources because that
Mm,
was more you could read the comments on springs and see what was flowing, what had dried out based on what other people had gone through recently. So that has maps and elevation in there as well, which I always had and always used.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, we also use the Far Out app logistically to plan in the beginning, and even just from a paper perspective, we use the Through Hiker's Companion Guide, which is a book that comes out annually. The only thing that really came on trail with us was the Far Out app, but outside of checking mileage and trying to not so much be on the phone the whole time, that's really as far as those logistics went, outside of trying to plan food and all of those other things.
Yeah, on the trail, generally I just use Far Out, but I plan with a bunch of maps, the National Geographic maps and White Blazes and several others, whatever I can find for my planning.
In the field, I also did use a full Garmin GPS with topographical maps. And then at home, I use Map Source to kind of take those GPX files and kind of overlay, just so I could keep track of what I had completed and what I had remaining.
Cool. So as far as related to like planning the hike, how did you guys arrange for logistics, such as like car staging or shuttles? Were there any super cool connections or resources that you used for that?
Yeah, I can say at least for us, we literally took an Uber to the Maryland state line in Penmar and off we went, right? As far as, taking shuttles, there weren't many shuttles that we used because we did it in a through hike fashion. But we ended up meeting quite a few of the shuttle people that are out there in areas like Hamburg and I can't remember the other place at the moment, but at a lot of the hostels, there is a lot of resources there too from previous hikers, and you even end up meeting people along the way. And the Far Out comments are pretty accurate. I mean, they do a really good job at making sure that data is pretty accurate.
Good to know.
At the time, I was organizer with Hudson Valley Hikers. So I would just actually post my trip ideas, vet out other participants, and we would just stage cars and actually do the hikes. So that was another way that I did that.
Cool.
Yeah, the few that weren't out and back for me, usually I'm sorry, the few that weren't out and back for me, usually I would get a friend or so to agree to do a hike, and then we would, do park one car at one end and the other car at the other end. And I think once or twice I also did take an Uber when I was close to where there was connectivity. But like I said before, most of mine were out and back.
Yeah. Wrangling friends is always a good way.
I did also hitchhike. I will mention that.
Hey. PA is pretty friendly for that.
Yeah, I'm kind of proud of myself. I've been meaning to try to hitchhike. I've always been a little afraid. I actually hitchhiked for the first time a weekend or two ago when I was doing the Mason-Dixon Trail. So I wasn't on the AT, but I did finally get the experience of hitchhiking.
Funny story. I also taught someone how to hitchhike while on the trail. I'm like, all right, take your pack off your back, put your sunglasses off, look at the person, make sure you don't look like you're some kind of con artist or you're going to be a serial killer, and, stick out your thumb.
Well, all right. So this is super practical, and I'm sure that most people wonder about this for doing like long distance trips. What types of things were really valuable for you guys to take for snacks and for eating? Like what were the meals that you prepared?
I'll say one really weird thing that everyone kind of looks at me weird when I do this, but I learned this when I backpacked like 75 miles in the high elevation of New Mexico. I would have oatmeal packets. And instead of, I hate having to clean dishes and all the extra stuff that goes into that and all the gear to carry. So I will often have like high protein oatmeal packets. I will pour some into my mouth, pour some water with it, slosh it around, and basically drink it. And it's like a super quick breakfast, requires no cleaning, no mess, and I'm on my way.
I
I
love it.
started out using the fancy like peak refuel meals, and then they got expensive. And then by the time I got to like when I was feeling pretty experienced, I was to the point of I like ramen, but I don't like the seasoning, so I would buy bulk cheese on Amazon and put it in Ziploc bags with the ramen noodles, and then mix in random things. That's what I.
Awesome.
Yeah, you would have thought I bought stocking good to go. We did a lot of hikes prior to the PA section just to test out food, especially with the kids, and we ended up doing a lot of boxes to towns that probably by the second town we realized that it wasn't really going to continue to work because the kids were getting sick of it. And until you're out on trail and you get to a place to resupply, and the kids start getting excited over Nutella and peanut butter or even just tortillas, it had that light bulb moment, right, where not only is it going to be lighter to carry 3 to 5 days worth of food from towns, and the staples that are always there are the oatmeal for breakfast, which those you really can't change. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where as much planning as you want to do ahead, it really is worth your time and your stress to just resupply in town.
I
That's a
would
good tip.
usually I would usually have a very light lunch, kind of like a Cliff Bar, but can't stand oatmeal. So I would pack couscous, Indian packets from, let's say, Trader Joe's or from one of the Indian supermarkets, the foil ones like with curry in it, and I would have that for breakfast and dinner. And the jet boil system I had also had a little French press. So I would always carry some home ground coffee because without that, I'm not getting up.
Yeah,
That
in
sounds
any
Like a
hike,
second,
delightful.
I just want a second jet boil. That's something I use for dinner and freeze dried meals. Super easy, quick to cook.
yeah, in any hike under 10 miles, I generally don't eat actually anything at all. I mean, I'll have with me a couple of protein bars, and if I do get hungry, I'll snack on one, but generally I don't. Um, and if it's over 10 miles, I'll sometimes throw in in the foil, some hot dog or sausage sandwich or something, and I'll snack on that along the way. And overnight, I still stick pretty much with the expensive dehydrated meals.
Cool. Did anybody experience any injuries on their trek, and how did you handle that?
I
Yeah, so oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead. No, please.
All right. I had I was meeting up with a friend I had met online, former through hiker who hopefully this year is going to take me from Katahdin as far south as I can go. But I was going to meet up with him. I had met up with him earlier to do some trail magic, and I was going to spend the night. And I just slipped on some rocks and had a gash on my head with blood coming out. Later on, I needed 10 staples in my head for that. I had dislocated a finger on my pinky, and my knee was banged up. I couldn't even stand. So I immediately called 911. They, and then while they were on their way, a couple of hikers passed me. I was alone. A couple of hikers passed me, and I told them they didn't need to stay because 911 had been notified, but they insisted on still. Well, one stayed with me, the other one went to the trailhead to help the people get back there, and they loaded me up in a stretcher, and at one point they were going. I was saying to myself, "Wow, it seemed to be going the wrong way," but I figured, well, these people know what they're doing, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And then I heard somebody say, I think we're supposed to be following these white things." So that got me a little bit nervous, but in the end, they did a really good job, got me out of there, and it was a pretty cool experience. And when I got back towards my car, I'd asked for for a police officer to, well, I'd asked them to if I could get a wallet out of my car because they were going to take me to the hospital, and a police officer had done that. But when I got back to the car, actually trail maintainer, who's one of my oldest friends, was there, and he had just heard reports that some old guy fell off a cliff, and he saw my car there, and then when he saw the police officer going into my car, he figured it must be me. So he actually stayed there, and he followed me to the hospital, and then drove me home. And the next day, he and his wife drove went back and picked up my car and drove that back to my house. So it was a unique experience. It was a pretty interesting experience. I hope not to repeat it, but it was a lot of fun. And I don't want to monopolize, but one more thing real quick. I was writing a book just, for my own self. I don't know that it'll ever be published, but I was going through about several different ways I could possibly end the book. And I was I had about 5 or 6 different things. And the minute I hung up with 911, the first thought that occurred to my mind was, well, this is the ending. This is the ending.
Oh.
So
Well, we're super grateful you're okay and that people were there that had the skills to help you, because that's a heck of an experience. Does anybody else have any
Yeah, I had a existing leg injury that I was nursing. I thought I was past the hump. And of course I had picked like the one of the most rockiest sections up in the northern portion. And 2.5 miles in, after a few those classic rock fins, I was unable to continue. So I hunkered down for a night, thinking it's going to be better the next day. It wasn't. So then I just self-rescued and hobbled back. I will admit it was a very good opportunity to finish off the flask I was carrying as some self-medication.
that's fair. Does anybody carry, like, do you guys have when you do your longer hikes, do you use the little Garmin like tracker things?
Yeah, the Garmin InReach is the one that we use. It's primarily more of an insurance policy than anything, right?
Yeah.
And it
I've one of
definitely is it definitely is super helpful.
I have one of those ACR PLBs. It's like a one-time cost, and it's actually registered with NOAA, I think, or someone like that of that nature. It lasts for 7 years, and the batteries floats on water, and it also will activate the emergency system whenever you press the button. Batteries are super easy to rebuild, but then again, I'm an electrical engineer, so I guess that's a little kind of cheating.
Well,
I don't, but no, I need to. I need to get a Garmin, especially before I go to Maine and New Hampshire. But
yeah.
at this point, I just rely on my phone and the emergency button on that.
So we'll switch to some questions that are maybe like a little more personal. Because we all know, or if I feel like most people that go out hiking knows that it definitely changes you on like a personal like soul level. So just curious, there's a question that was posed in the chat and it was actually on my list. Just to hear a little bit about how, the hardships or like the challenges that you faced while you were out there on the trail, like how did that change you? How did you overcome them? Especially, Rob is very interesting, and when he hiked like with his companion and his family, I mean, that was like a whole different level of like hiking with children. And so just curious, were there any hardships that you faced while you were hiking, and like what were they? And then how did you overcome them and or be changed by them? Hopefully for the
Yeah,
better.
I definitely think one of the interesting things for me, at least from the kids' perspectives, was leading into this hike, it was not our first hike by any means, right? And one of the things leading into it was how long could we go outside of a long weekend that we've done before. And surprisingly, even with a few zeros that we had to have, because I ended up with some IT band issues that lasted a few days, the kids never once showed signs or even verbalizations of wanting to be done, right? Matter of fact, when we got to New Jersey, it was one of those things where the kids absolutely did not want to stop. But the things is that, like, even my daughter had a few days on trail that were hard, where she did have some, I think, doubts in herself, because the days were long and things like that. And even before we started the hike, there was conversation around, hey, look, like we're not going to quit on the first day, right? So, that did lead into, I think, maybe not so much a dilemma, but more of like a decision to make. Okay, like if this lasts more than a day or two, maybe we're done, right? But now that the hike's over, it's more a matter of what's next, or do we end up looking to do anything else that's that long, or even um, maybe scale back the miles, or there's different approaches, I think, especially when the kids are involved, to make it successful, or even to continue to have it be enjoyable for them, right?
Hmm.
I think the hardest thing for me at first was I was never really one to more of a weightlifter, and not really very didn't have much cardio. So at first it was a struggle, and I was kind of, and I was carrying a lot of stuff. I used to carry all my water with me like for days because I didn't trust like filters or anything. So I struggled a lot at first, but then as I kind of learned, it got easier. But the biggest takeaway for me is the what it does to your brain. You're doing something that's incredibly difficult, whether you're doing it for a day or you're doing it for from start to finish. It's difficult to walk a really long way, and a lot of it does a lot of good stuff for your brain when you're just walking.
Yeah, I gained a lot of confidence. There was when I first started hiking as an adult, I had hiked a lot as a Boy Scout years ago, but when I first hiked as an adult about oh maybe 10 years ago, I just started, and 3 4 miles I would be dead. I'd have to almost be carried back to the car, and a lot of times I would push myself, and sometimes I would fail miserably. I'd almost set myself up for failure. But I learned to kind of embrace that practice, because every time I failed, I would, retreat, think about, what I did wrong, what I could have done better. And then I come back, and then I reconquer, the trail, after um, having failed. And when you succeed after having failed, I think that's the best type of success there is. And so it's really given me a lot of confidence to know, I can do what I want to do. At one point in my life, I was over 500 pounds. I was like 540 pounds. And even though I was pretty active for a 540-pound person, there were limits. So it's expanded greatly the amount of things I can do. I've, jumped out of airplanes, jumped off the stratosphere, kayaking. So it's just, yeah, it's changed my life. I hike now about 800, 900 miles a year, and just absolutely love it. And it gives me peace of mind too. It's helped me. There's a while, and I know Holly's very big into meditation and all this. And I used to be honest, I used to think that was kind of all hogwash. But I've read a couple books, one on Zen and hiking and whatnot, and I've actually not really consistent with my personality, but I actually tried it a few times, and it was amazing too. The change that you come, and the sounds that you hear when you're listening. It's not just background noise. So yeah, it's changed me in a lot of ways.
I guess I'll add, I think all of us are very unique, and that's why this panel is great. I think everyone has a very different background, kind of like Holly was saying. But I've been lucky that I'm an Eagle Scout, and I've worked in the field of conservation my whole life. So hiking's always been easy for me, but I've hiked with a lot of other people. I brought friends with me of different backgrounds and experiences as I've hiked through Pennsylvania. And it's been good for me to kind of learn to be patient with those other people and try to understand their skill set, how to make them comfortable, how to hike at their pace because I'm a very fast hiker because I would always just be way ahead of her. And that was frustrating. So having the slower person go first, carrying some of their gear and this and that, or having a dog with me for a bunch of hikes, like yeah, just thinking about those other people other than just me hiking quick.
Yeah, on my end, I found out kind of already knew I'm not a big fan of deadlines. So if you tell me that I have to finish a hike by a certain time or a certain location or whatnot, I don't like that. Being restricted by those type of things. So I really enjoyed the last section that I went on because it was more of like, okay, it's gonna probably take 5 days. Let's bank for 6 days, and wherever you end up that day, well, who cares? Because you have your tent on your back. So
Well, thank you for sharing those stories. And yeah, it's a definitely like just the way that hiking kind of like gives you this canvas to kind of create whatever experience you want. And just you don't really have an agenda sometimes. And I think that is part of the challenge of like, I'll see what the trail has for me to learn right now. And that's super awesome. Just the things that you guys were able to experience. Um, Curious, um, did you take, so I know we talked a little bit about some of the stuff that you carried with you, but on a personal level, was there something like a luxury item or like a guilty pleasure that you were like, I just have to have this with me. I don't really care if it takes up space in my backpack.
the French press and coffee.
Of course. That is a necessity though.
Sometimes I had like a nice summer hikes. I have a tent and a hammock because I've slept in hammocks before, but tents are definitely better if the ground's okay. But just like getting into a campsite early and just laying in a hammock and relaxing is always wonderful.
Awesome.
For me, it was the pillow.
Nice.
What did Rob say?
A pillow.
A pillow. I take a chair, a camp chair.
Nice. Anybody else?
Yeah, sure. Well, one item. I
Sure.
have a folding saw that I pretty much carry everywhere, and I use that in winter. If I snag a branch that's try stealing my hat, I get pissed off at it and cut the branch off. Do ad hoc trail maintenance, and when you want to set up a fire, it makes it pretty easy to kind of cut off the small brush to kind of just get the fire going.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm curious, we're gonna move to some like questions about like just the experience in general. Um, so if you've hiked other sections of the Appalachian Trail in other states or other long distance hiking trails in Pennsylvania, how would you describe the difference between the Pennsylvania AT versus like other sections of the AT or other longer distance trails in PA? Anybody know?
Sorry, I was typing in the chat.
Cool.
Yeah, I've done a whole bunch of the longer distance trails, pretty much as multi-day through hikes, and some of the other ones like the Susquehanna Black Forest Trail, Allegheny Front Trail, Kahana Trail. I found those all to be fantastic. A lot less people that you'll encounter on the trails. I find that the campsites are less they're more rustic. They're not as kind of quote unquote used as the ones on the PA on the AT. But for those, you have to practice more of the principle of leave no trace and kind of be prepared with your own equipment. Either have like a hammock system or a tent setup, because you won't necessarily have that number of lean-tos that you could expect on the AT.
That's a good insight. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Nothing?
All right, I'll
That's
go again. You'll
no, it's
also
okay. It's fine. I just posing questions and watching the chat.
I was gonna say, if you want another one, you'll also find a lot more wildlife. I
Mhm.
mean, I've seen a lot more deer, a lot more black bear, so it's another cool benefit.
That was actually on the list. If you, when you were on the AT and PA, did you encounter any wildlife and what did you see and how did you handle it?
Yeah, by the Lehigh Gap, just south of it, by the I think it's the Outerbridge Shelter. I was George Outerbridge Shelter, I think. I was doing some trail maintenance with one of the ridge runners and a friend of mine, and I'm slow going uphill, so they went up ahead of me, and I was following them, and I had my shoelace had come untied, so I stopped at the shelter. I sat down, I tied my shoe, I brought out my phone just to check real quick some messages, and I looked up, and there was a bear about 15 feet from me. And I'd always wondered what would happen if I came up close. I had seen bears twice from a distance. And I since I had the phone in my hand, I actually took a couple pictures first, and then I stood up and I lifted my forearm canes, ahead of me and above me, and I started yelling at it, gently yelling at it like you're supposed to. And it wasn't moving. I had beef jerky in my backpack, and I know it was smelling that. And so I backed away, and the trail went back around the shelter, and he actually went around the shelter the other way and then started staring me down again. So I was getting
Oh
a
my
little worried. Now,
goodness.
this guy had been obviously fed by people. He was acclimated to people. He was not that afraid. And so I tossed a couple rocks his way, and then he finally took off. And later, when I looked at the picture of the bear was right underneath a sign that said "Warning: Bear Activity." So, but yeah, that was in Pennsylvania, my big wildlife story.
Well, yeah, that's a big deal.
I had a bear not far from where I come
Oh,
up under my tarp one night. I woke up and he was underneath me and ran off and then circled around our campsite all night long, which was quite unpleasant. But I've had a lot of bear experience in my life, but that was a little bit much. I didn't need that. I don't need that to happen again.
wow. Yeah, that's intimate.
Don't sleep on top of your food.
All the miles we've done, we've yet to see a bear. I think the most exciting thing we've ever seen on trail was a raccoon, but that was on the Horseshoe Trail.
They're
Saw
super
a
cute.
porcupine near Lehigh Gap. That was the most exciting thing ever. Yeah, no other wildlife too much except deer snoring at night and all that.
In New York too, and in New York, I know it's not Pennsylvania, but I was scrambling up a side while I was waiting for a friend. I just climbed up some rocks, and there was a side trail. I figured I'd scramble up there and see if there was a little view. And I was just feet away from these two giant vultures, and it was, I hadn't imagined how big and beautiful they were so close up. They were just absolutely gigantic, and yeah, I got some pictures of them, and I actually got some video of them flying off. So that was pretty exciting.
Very cool.
So apart from Homo sapiens and me conversing with them at a campfire or a trailhead, trying to get some trail magic, the cool things I saw on the PA section of the AT, one day I saw both a copperhead as well as what the heck is it, a rattler? So two poisonous snakes in one day. Um, a few days prior to that, I was going off just over a small little rise, and something fluttered in the trees, and I'm like, "That's a big bird." So I followed it to where it had landed, and there it was in plain daylight. I had startled a barred owl, so I took some really good photos as it's it was eyeballing me below its branch.
That's awesome. So, okay, this is a little bit of a multi-part question, but it shouldn't be difficult. What time of year did you hike? And did you go north to south or south to north? And then what were the pros and cons of that?
So we did spring into almost summer, and as you can, probably guess that the cons really are the heat that crept up on us in June, and actually even in May we ended up hiking during one of the hottest days, and water was scarce. But at the same time, it's just one of those things where, uh, yeah, I think it was more the heat than anything that time of year.
And you said you started at the Maryland border?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really just took any weekend I could get during the growing season sometimes. I said in the chat, like, I work a lot of Saturdays, so like whenever the stars would align and I can get out for a weekend to keep pushing forward, I was out there. There was a weekend it rained the whole time. There was a day hike I did where I got above a certain elevation and found there's a nice coating of ice on everything, which was a little precarious. And then some like hot summer days as well.
Yeah, I mostly went non-winter seasons, and the general direction was north to south.
Yeah, I didn't have any direction. I just did whatever. I usually look to go wherever there's greater elevation. I like to climb up mountains. Seems a little more, um, good. Um, and I go all different times. I mean, obviously, mostly, it's warm all that, but I do a lot of winter hiking as well. And actually, on the again, not the AT, but on the Mason-Dixon Trail, just a couple of weeks ago when we had the first snowfall, I went and I had forgotten that I had lent my gloves that I usually keep in my backpack to a police officer who was looking for some warm gloves that he could fire his gun with, and I not hadn't gotten them back. And we came up to about, I don't know, maybe a 30-foot rock climb that we had to do. So I just manned up and I did it with my bare hands. And by the time I got to the top of it, I was, I couldn't feel my hands for about 5 minutes. I was rubbing them and whatnot. Um, but yeah, no, I like hiking just about any season.
I started in the winter. I really like winter camping, so I do quite a bit of that. I get warm really easily, so I try to avoid the heat. So I did a lot of stuff in the. I did from 850 near Duncannon, right before Duncannon. I went south from there, and then I went north from that same point. So I did the southern part first.
Oh,
In
you
the
cut
cooler
out.
months, and then I also got to do. I finished out May or June. Can you hear me? I have
Yeah,
poor
you just
connection.
cut out a little bit. I heard from you went Duncannon south, did that section, and then you flipped and went the other way after that. Is
Yeah,
that
I did wet or northern PA in the warmer months, and I think I
right?
finished in it was like May or June whenever it was starting to get warm, and we had some hot days where we were going along and all the trail magic, the water jugs were gone, so that was quite depressing. I got a little
Oh,
bit of really hot and really cold, which was nice.
yeah, very cool. Okay. So this is, I'm sure probably everybody could probably talk for like hours about this, but if you could maybe just give like one or two or maybe three, like what were your favorite spots along the PA section? Or like what do you stands out like that was like super memorable, like that vista or that whatever.
There's
My favorite. Oh, go ahead, Brett.
go ahead.
No.
This is like in my backyard, kind of where I started my hike, but it's called Chickalemi Summit. There's like the old power dam that's up there, the Heartline campsite. That's just I can walk up there whenever I want. And that's always a special place. The Vista by Duncannon, which the name escapes me right now, just as you hike south out of Duncannon, is probably like the best that I saw while hiking.
Yeah, I think my favorites become like the Lehigh Gap, the rock scramble. I love rock scrambles. And also you can do like a circle it's about 2.5 to 3 miles. So it's become a favorite place of mine to take new hikers. I've taken a lot of my former students there for their first hike ever, and they absolutely love it. I've done it now about over 20 times with different people. So that's my favorite. I think one of my favorite other experiences was in Fort Indian Town Gap. Is that the name of the place? Yeah, because first of all, getting there, GPS was directing me to go down a dirt road that had a sign, warning: "Do not enter unexploded ordnance." And so it was fun just trying to find a place to find the way in. I ended up having to call the police, the Fort Police, to help guide me to the trailhead. And then you have the ruins, you have this old mine, and you have the general, which is an old earth mover. And a friend of mine, Kevin Bristol, I think he's on the line right now. Kevin Bristol and I went there once, and we actually saw a person whose father had worked as the postmaster general in one of these old towns. And he said he knew everybody who had worked on the general except for the first guy. He said, because the first guy uh, got killed the first day on the job. He ran over himself. He said those people up there, they had a still and they did a lot of bootlegging, and he got really drunk and just ran over himself with the earth mover. But he actually, growing up, knew all the people who operated that earth mover except for that first guy.
So a few things come to mind, right? I was camping inadvertently without even knowing, pretty close to the summit of Blue Mountain. And here I am trying to go to sleep, had a little campfire going, and suddenly I hear AC/DC as loud as it would be coming out of my freaking headphones. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. Let me see what this is. So, I figure it out. It's, the Summit Lodge, and they had some kind of like party or something going there. So I'm like, all right, might as well go refill my water, listen to some music, and have a beer. So that's kind of fun. The other thing, while I was doing a lot of the heavy mileage in on the AT, I was with a group of friends, and me and one other person managed to get to one of the trailheads pretty early. And there was a guy that was just finishing up Trail Magic for a relative, and he comes over and he says, "Well, I have the last of it, but do you want some pulled pork, some ice cream, and some PBRs? I made it all myself." I'm like, "Yes, yes, I do."
I really like the section near Dolphin. I grew up in Fishing Creek, so that and my aunt and uncle took me hiking on that section a lot when I was younger. So that's always a special section to me. And also going north from the Pinnacle, I did my longest day there. I did 36 miles, and that whole section is special to me because there was a lot of mental hardship that I overcame that day. So that'll always kind of be a special area to me as well.
Yeah, that's a heck of a day. My gosh.
Iron Master's Hostel was also pretty cool to stay at, I must say. And it's the shelters in the southern part, the PATC shelters, fantastic. One of them even had like two swinging benches and a little garden. I really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, they do a phenomenal job. Really, really amazing. But I definitely want to be mindful of time. So we'll wrap up with this last question. What's next for everybody? Are you planning another hike, or you just taking some time?
I'd like to get out more. I mentioned this in the chat too. Tuscarora Trail. My buddy that came, he lives in he's from Pennsylvania, but he works in the National Park Service out in Moab, Utah. So he's a big hiker. So when he's around, I'm like, all right, like someone that is like really quick at my pace, it's like outdoors all the time. Like that's a nice break. So I want to do some more of those state forest kind of loops and stuff
Yeah.
because we did the old loggers path.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's time. It's tough, you know. I look at my calendar, I'm like, all right, I have in the next 3 months I have like one weekend available, you know, and then sometimes I just want to sit at home and not do anything for a day.
For sure.
I'm in an
Yep.
interesting situation. I started the actual AT and PA, that section, when I still lived in New Jersey. And then I moved to New Hampshire just because I was able to for work, and it was closer to the area of where I wanted to be, closer to the mountains. So, being part of search and rescue team and being also a ski patroller at a local ski mountain here, I get out all the time. And I mean, a lot of my current projects are like, very oddball things like hiking all the trails in the Whites, finishing up the New England 100 highest in winter. So I'm working on a few interesting projects while I'm living up here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to, one day hopefully finish the AT. I have about 45% of it done now, the entire AT. And also KTA has a map of different long trails, and I've started now coloring off the ones that I've done, the portions of the ones that I've done, and I hope to do all of those. I finished a couple of, well, I finished one book of, 39 of the 40 best hikes in the Philly area, and I have a couple other books like that that I'm going through. Last summer, I actually hiked down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back up, and I'm hoping to do that was on the short but steep half, the south side. And I'm planning with a friend that I met on the trail to do a rim to rim sometime in the future. So those are some of my immediate plans.
Very cool.
I'm also planning to do some of the longer trails that both of those guys just mentioned. I also have family in Montana, so I've been doing some hiking while I'm out there. And my big goal right now for out there is to do Granite Peak, which is Montana's highest point, and it's regarded as very difficult. And after the hike I did there this past summer, I see why. And I'm also hoping to do a through hike sometime in the next 2 to 5 years would be my guess. That's my big goal.
Very cool. Did we lose Rob? Okay. I'm not sure what happened there. I hope he's okay. Well, thank you guys again. This was super, super great. Just for everybody who, if you, for whatever reason, have never hiked on the Appalachian Trail, you are welcome to join us for our spring hiking weekend in Stroudsburg. There's going to be 3 different hikes offered on different sections of the AT. One of the sections is actually cared for by KTA, so there was a big reroute that was done recently, and so you'll get to see some of the new vistas and the new trail, which is really fun and cool. And like I said, if you're interested in planning your hikes, KTA offers a full guide, and then we also have like the individual section maps that are really wonderful, very, very detailed, and gives you like all different kinds of like the terrain, the elevation, everything's like sectioned out really, really nicely, and you can like buy them as a whole pack or buy them individually or whatever. So that's a super great resource. These guys are amazing resources. And thank you again for being here. Everybody, and especially our panel, thank you. That was absolutely delightful. This will be recorded, and I will do my darndest to get it sent out tomorrow. My best. I'll do my best to do that tomorrow. Yeah, thank you guys again so much. This is delightful, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks very much for having us.
Yep. Thank you for
Thanks,
having
take
us.
care.
Have a good evening.
Yep, it was a fun time, and good luck to everyone with your hiking ambitions.
Yeah.
Thank you as well.
Happy trails.
Yes. Mhm.